Almost everything people know about living in Orlando is wrong. Not a little wrong, but completely backwards. People think it's all about the theme parks, that a hurricane's gonna flatten your house, that nobody can afford insurance here anymore. I've lived in Orlando for 16 years and sold homes here for about 6. So today I'm walking you through the 5 biggest myths about actually living in this city and what's actually true. Whether you're thinking about moving here or you've lived here your whole life and you're finally thinking about buying, this one is for you. Hi, I'm Chad Gibson, a real estate agent here in Orlando with LPT Realty. My whole approach is helping people make calm, informed decisions. I'm not about the hype, I'm not about the pressure, so let's clear the air. 5 myths, here we go. All right, myth number 1, Orlando is one big tourist trap. Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, traffic, and nothing else. Here's the truth. The tourists mostly stay in a few specific corridors, International Drive, for example, the Disney area, down near the attractions. But if you step outside these zones, Orlando feels like a completely normal city. I live pretty close to downtown Orlando, and on a normal Tuesday, I'm not sitting around thinking about theme parks. We've got real neighborhoods here with real character. College Park, for example, up in the Edgewater Drive corridor, Thornton Park with its brick streets and outdoor dining, the Mills 50 district, which, by the way, quietly has more Michelin guide restaurants per capita than anywhere else in the area. And the economy is not what people think as well. Orlando added almost 37,500 jobs in 2024, another 31,000 plus the year after. The Lake known as a medical city has 5 hospital systems clustered within about 2 miles. Advent Health and Orlando Health are some of the largest employers in the whole region. Lockheed Martin, EA's Game Studio, Darden, they're all headquartered or building things right here in Orlando. So this is a real city with a real economy. The mouse does get all the headlines though. All right, myth number 2, and this is the one that scares people the most, and I was concerned about it as well. If you move to Orlando, it's only a matter of time before a hurricane comes and just completely wipes out your house. Here's what people miss. Orlando is about 50 miles inland from the Space Coast, and we're about an hour and a half from the other coast. So that distance matters quite a lot. The strongest, most destructive part of a hurricane is usually right at the coastline. The storm surge especially. So by the time a storm reaches here in Orlando, it's typically weakened. So here are the actual numbers. Over the last 50 years, Orlando has taken a true direct hit from only a handful of hurricanes. Charlie and Francis in 2004 and Irma in 2017. That was my first hurricane. Compare that to Miami, which had 7 in that same time window. And even in 2024, when Hurricane Milton crossed the state, it came ashore on the Gulf Coast. The storm surge and the strongest winds stayed on the west side. But over here, we did deal with heavy rain, flooding, and tornado watches. So serious, yes, but not the city flattening hit people picture and see on the news. So I'm not going to tell you storms here are nothing. They are real. You prepare, you respect them. We even have hurricane parties. But because we're flat, flooding is the real thing to watch. But the idea that inland Orlando is some kind of hurricane bullseye, that's just not what the history shows. In 16 years here, I don't know a single person who's been seriously harmed by one. All right, myth 3. You've probably seen this in the headlines that Florida homeowners insurance is so expensive that nobody can afford it and you'll never even get a policy. Well, that story was real for a few years. Rates were climbing 20-30% year over year, which is crazy. But in 2026, the market has turned a corner. After a round of state insurance reforms, the lawsuits that were driving these prices up dropped off, and 17 new insurance companies have come into the state. The state's insurer, Citizens, they just got approved for an average rate decrease of around 9%. That's a decrease. And big carriers like State Farm have filed for cuts around 10%. There's dozens of companies that filed for no increase or lower rates this year. So here's the part that matters for us specifically in Orlando, that insurance is a lot cheaper inland than on the coast. The average premium in the Orlando area runs around $4,000 to $5,000 a year. If you drive an hour east to the Space Coast, for example, that same coverage is closer to $7,000 to $8,000. So being inland does save you some real money. So yes, you absolutely have to budget for insurance here. It's a real line item, but the entire you can't get insurance, that's last year's story. All right, myth number 4, and this is one I get all the time from first-time home buyers. that I should wait to buy because Orlando market is about to crash. I hear this so much from so many people, and I get it. Nobody wants to buy a house and watch it lose value in the next month. I bought a new construction home myself in 2025, so I'm a little in tune to that personally. But let's look at what's actually happening with the prices. The median home price in Orlando has been remarkably flat over the last few years. About $381,000 in 2023, $398,000 in 2024, $405,000 last year, and around $400,000 now. So that's not a crash, that's a market trying to catch its breath. The forecast for the next year calls for slow, steady appreciation, somewhere in the 2 to 5% range depending on the neighborhood. And the reason it's not set up to collapse is simple. People keep moving here, and we don't have enough homes to go around. Population growth plus tight supply is the opposite of a crash setup. Could one specific overpriced house lose value? Yeah, of course it can. And that's exactly why you work with somebody who will tell you when something's priced wrong. But sitting on the sidelines waiting for a crash the data doesn't support, that's how people miss years of building equity. But I always say the best time to move is if you need to move and you're ready. All right, myth number 5 is the flip side. And I actually have to debunk this one in the other direction. So the myth is that Florida's dirt cheap. There's no state income taxes, so you'll be swimming in savings. Half of that's true. There's no state income taxes, and if you're coming from a high tax state, that's real money going back in your pocket. So I'm not going to take that away from you. But cheap is where people get surprised. Orlando's cost of living is right around the national average right now. It's not dramatically below like it was a decade ago. And the real budget shock for buyers isn't the mortgage. It's everything stacked around it. Property taxes here run a little above the national average. Homeowners insurance, like we just talked about, also is a little higher. And in a lot of the newer communities like Lake Nona, Horizon West, you've got HOA and CDD fees that can add anywhere from a few hundred to a few $1,000s a year on top of your taxes. So the good news, if the home is your primary residence, the homestead exemption knocks down your taxable value, saves you around $800 to $1,000 per year, and it caps how fast your assessment can rise. But the lesson is this: don't just budget for the down payment and the mortgage, you need to budget for the whole picture. So the buyers who are happiest here are the ones who saw real numbers before they ever bought, not afterwards. All right, so let's bring this home. 5 myths, quick recap. Number 1, Orlando isn't just theme parks, it's a real city with a real economy. Number 2, we are inland and the hurricane risk is far lower than the coast. Number 3, insurance is actually coming down in 2026 and it's cheaper here than over on the coast. Number 4, the market isn't crashing, it's flat with slow, steady growth projected coming up in the next few years. And 5, no income tax is real, but budget for the whole picture, not just the mortgage. If you're thinking about buying or selling in the Orlando area and you want someone who will give you the real numbers and walk you through every step by step, no pressure, no sales pitch, reach out and let's set up a time to talk. I would genuinely love to help you figure out what makes sense for your specific situation. And by the way, if this was helpful, if you could please do me a favor, subscribe, like the video, all that good stuff. I break down what it's like to actually live and buy here in Orlando every single week. No hype, just the real stuff. I'm Chad Gibson, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.